Welcome to the meetup for June 5th. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Review Push, for the pizza and soda, which looks like it's been thoroughly destroyed. So feel free to have whatever left so we don't have to take any of it home. For those of you that are new or unfamiliar, my name is Hunter Graysick. Other player known here is Terry Matula. And by the way, you can thank me for somehow sending the email not once but twice, and sometimes 3 times. I don't know what happened. Meetup kind of screwed up when I tried to send it. But our main topics tonight are just Lumen and Laravel 5.1, and then anything else y'all want to discuss. So I'll hand it over to Terry to get the show on the road.
I'm not going to stand. Some quick calendar stuff. Next Thursday, if you want to do the regular PHP meetup, Head of Technology from Magento. If you haven't tried out Magento, it's actually gotten a lot better than since the last time I used it. Yeah, it's next Thursday, and it's on the east side. That's nice over there. Other stuff coming up, LaraCon is in August. Tickets are now $375, and it seems like they have a pretty decent lineup so far. I'm not totally, I don't know if I'm going to go yet, but looking into it. Next Laravel Austin meetup, July 2nd. Next PHP meetup, July 9th. And also PHP World is happening in November. And actually gave a talk there last year, which is the first year they did that. And it's the same people that put on PHP Tech. It was a pretty good conference. This PHP World was a pretty good conference. And they actually have call for papers open until June 6th. I'm not going to submit anything because, yeah. But if anybody wants to, if you have an idea for a talk, and they're open, they're very open to like new speakers, people that have that aren't like set, the regular guys you see at every single PHP conference. So that's good. So if you have an idea for something to talk about, check out PHP World. Yeah, that's it. So what I was going to do is just kind of go over, we've been using Lumen, which is the micro framework based on Laravel. And let's see. So one of the tasks of my job was to build a Facebook app. And so this is a kind of a port of our current mobile app we have, and it's interfacing with our APIs and things like that. But I didn't want to have the JavaScript in this interface directly with our APIs because there's some security stuff there. And so I thought, well, I'll create kind of a thin client that interacts with the API on the back end. So then the JavaScript will just hit that thin client. The thin client will then hit our full APIs and be a lot more secure. I started initially using the Slim framework, because there's only going to be maybe 4 or 5 different routes or API calls in this. And I think as soon as I completed that, then Lumen was announced. Taylor announced Lumen as the fast, slimmed down Laravel framework. And since we use Laravel and other stuff, I thought, well, I'm going to try and port it over. And it's actually a pretty easy pretty easy to port over. A lot of the syntax is very similar, and I mean, it's, didn't take more than like a day, I think, to get everything ported over. So kind of that's what I ended up, my first experience with Lumen. And there were a couple of gotchas I had on the way. I'll just show a little bit of some sample code here.
Whatever.
So the first thing is the folder structure is fairly similar to Laravel 5. So if you're familiar with the console exception, the HTTP, the routes file, it's pretty much all exactly the same. And then what it comes down to is a lot of the default stuff is not inside Lumen. A lot of the configurations are kind of just pre-baked in. And all of this stuff is commented out. So all the facades are in there. There's no eloquent. There's all this middleware stuff, cookies, sessions, and then the CSRF verification stuff. That's all commented out by default. And so if you're doing just pretty straight like APIs, just right out of the box, you'll just probably not need all that extra stuff. And so it makes it, that's kind of what makes it a lot faster, because it's not pulling in all that when you open up the app. However, it relies heavily on this .env file if you want to do any kind of configurable stuff. And there are some defaults. The first thing that I had an issue with was it was wanting to use memcache as the session driver. And without being able to use the .env file, I had to figure out how to set the configurations on like you do in Laravel. And what I found, and it's not, I think it's like a one line in the documentation, is that you, inside the package, Laravel, yeah, inside the package, there is a Laravel, the Lumen framework, and then there's a config folder. And this is where all the default configs are set. And you can actually copy this whole folder, drop it into the root, and it will then use that config file, that config folder, just like a regular Laravel config folder. So that made customizing stuff a lot easier. So that was the one big gotcha. At this point, it starts getting to be, I think I only implemented facades. So come on, I'm not doing any direct database stuff, but with the facades, I wanted to just make my life a little bit easier. But then the rest of the stuff is basically just exactly like Laravel. So the little bit of syntax difference with using the app post, app get, app login, that kind of stuff. But the rest of it is all you build out your controllers. The controllers build out, let's see. It works the exact same way. And the other little bit that I kind of added on my own was some logging functionality. And really I'm just extending the monologue logger and just passing it in as a variable in the controller, and then extending controller, and then just logging that way. All in all, it's remarkably similar to Laravel. So I mean, it was very easy to get going. Once I figured out the config issues, that made things a whole lot easier. And
so you said you copied that from another?
Yeah, inside the vendor directory. the Laravel Lumen framework, there is all the default configs. But if you just copy that and just drop it into the root, like a regular Laravel app, yeah, if you look at the source code, it checks there first. And also it does all the environment stuff too. So if you have your environment set up, it'll pull in, just like if you have a production directory and a development directory, it'll pull in all those just like regular Laravel does. That was the only real gotcha, because I needed it a little bit more configurable than the default, but just not as configurable as a full Laravel installation. So yeah, but other than that, I found it to be very similar to Laravel, very easy to get going, and yeah, it works pretty fast. So I definitely noticed with the game that I built is built using the React.js framework, and it's pretty speedy. So that's about it.
What did you think of React?
I really like React. It's my new favorite JavaScript framework. I have opinions. I know Vue.js has been a big thing in Laracasts and stuff like that. We're not JavaScript meetup, but I don't like mixing JavaScript and HTML. So like having the Vue, or what is it, the V dot whatever tags inside the HTML. Like I prefer React because it doesn't pretend to be HTML. It creates that virtual DOM and then just spits everything out to the DOM. So your HTML page is blank, basically. And so I like that because it's not lying. Whereas Vue and Angular and Ember, you're still putting stuff inside the HTML, but having to mess with it, and that doesn't seem very, not my taste. But I love it. I mean, it was easy to get set up, and there's a Flux architecture as far as different data stores and stuff like that that opened my eyes quite a bit. It a lot easier.
Sweet. Well, I'm going to go into a little bit more of Lumen's side. Actually, the thing I was going to go into, Terry actually already mentioned, but
Sorry.
no worries. So one of the things that immediately came to my mind when Lumen first came out, I was like, all right, cool, we got a Laravel micro framework. What do I do with it? And started thinking about it more, and then one of the ideas I came up with was, which is basically what Terry did, is you have an API, it uses something like OAuth 2 or API keys and secrets, etc. Either way, there's some secure bits of information you don't want to just like hard code into the JavaScript file that anybody can just come by and swipe. But you still want to do that fancy one-page JavaScript page because Web 2.0 or whatever the hell we're calling it now. So you need like a proxy in between your JavaScript code and your API, which maintains the secrets, makes the request. And that's where Lumen comes in, because it's nice, it's lightweight, it'll get the job done. You don't need the entirety of Laravel to do it. And you could use something like Aura, but with Lumen, if you're familiar with Laravel, it's quick and easy to get into Lumen. So I built a kind of a dummy API in Laravel 5, which I'm not going to show much of that code because it's just like some very, very plain Jane elegant model stuff and using models in the controllers, all that stuff you're not supposed to do, but it gets the job done for something like this. Built the API and a very, very rudimentary API secret system, which is just pulling a key from a config file and seeing if it exists. After that, I went to Lumen and started setting up the actual proxy API, more or less. I built a little bit more than I was able to get done for the actual like front end rendering stuff, but the main pieces were the homepage to actually render the app, and then a route to actually get all the posts, and then a route to get individual post data based on like a slug or something like that. I built a blog because I'm boring. And then just another route that the actual front end uses to get to the post. That's all nice and pretty looking for the end user. So I also used React.js because I wanted to learn something new, and this seemed like a good opportunity to do so. So the main view of our app is just very simple bootstrap with React, the JSX transformers. So you don't have to do like pre-compiling before putting it up on a thing. And I'll go ahead and bump up the text size. Another library just to do some pretty formatting stuff because I like things to look nice. Basic HTML setup. Then we get into the fun parts with the React code. And since we're not JavaScript, I'm not going to go into like every single detail on React. If you're curious about it, I would point to Laracast. It's got a pretty good couple of lessons on using React, getting the basics down, and then building I think he built like a GIST box. Just you put in the user's GitHub username and it'll return the links to their 5 last GIST they made. And this React code's not the best, as Terry got to see me fumble around with it before getting here. But it's pretty straightforward, just a div with a class row. In React Land, you have to do a class name instead of class because of it's trying to interpret class as, I think, actually making a class, I believe. I can't remember the exact reason. Just row, bootstrap row, and then the actual post object in React.
Can you make it a little bigger?
No. Yeah. That good?
Yeah.
The post op, basically the blog object is just a container of all the post items inside of it. So very inefficient, but we're just getting all the posts from the proxy, passing in, mapping that data into rendering a individual post object for each one, passing in the slug, which then in turn grabs the individual post data and renders it. But doing all that allows us to have this RESTful blog that loads in. Apparently the date stuff's not working anymore because Moment.js is saying invalid date. That's unfortunate. And then from there, each of these will link to their individual post. You probably want to not do what I did, and if I would have actually touched this code a little bit more than I did before, I would have made 2 different objects, one for the front page, like listing of the post, and then an actual individual post to render it better than this. But this way, you don't have to expose any of your API secrets. Say you've built like you made a whole entire blog system using REST and just completely made the WordPress REST plugin thing obsolete, but you've got secrets. And this is just simply doing a guzzle call to the actual API itself, passes in the API key, does fancy error stuff, and then I'm just cheating and I'm storing all the cache, the individual post by their slug in the cache, which is how I'm just getting the individual post data. Very quick and dirty and hacky. If you don't want to use the facades at all, Lumen has these very handy dandy helpers like response, redirect, etc., and they just underlie a like inside the function it's using a response factory, which is actually specific to Lumen to generate the responses. But you can actually call response without any data passed into it, and you'll return the response object if you need to do more specific manipulation, like adding custom headers, making a like XML response if you're unfortunately stuck with XML rendering or whatever. So it's got a lot of helpers to make it to where you don't need to bring in the slight overhead of loading all the different facades and the service providers to power the facades and all that extra stuff that comes with Laravel by default. Excuse me. So this is one use for it, just proxying. The obvious other use is if you've got a very small application and you don't need everything that Laravel has to offer, but you still want to do something in Laravel, it'll come in handy. For example, another Lumen thing that we're doing at Perk is we are building a handy dandy fancy Oofff 2 server, which is the most exhilarating thing out there. But instead of having it tacked into our API and just add yet more code to the API, we decided to micro framework it out and microservice it out more or less. So we could use a full Laravel application here and accomplish the same thing, but at the moment we only have a handful of routes. I'm on a different branch, so there's only one route here, but it's nice and fast. Like, we don't need any of the extra stuff like form builders and all that that comes with like Laravel 4, at least out of the box. But we can pick and choose what we need. And a lot of the configuration is really just done in this Bootstrap app file. Registering your service providers, you tack them here. Same with middlewares and route middlewares. And then, as you already saw earlier, it's where you would enable facades or Eloquent if you needed the database pieces. We don't, because we're using Redis to store all of our Oofff 2 stuff. So we only have 3 providers compared to the ton that come with Laravel, and we don't even really need. Some of these only exist just to shortchange some stuff, like we're doing some, we don't really use Eloquent at Perk, we just use the database manager because we don't have a lot of like traditionally related things, such as where Eloquent excels as the related models. But getting the database manager out of Lumen, or to work in Lumen out of the bat, was a bit of a gotcha that I ran into. And I wound up having to just manually call make on lowercase db, which is what the facade would usually point to, and then alias db to the database manager, and then you could dependency inject the database manager into anything within Lumen. And then same thing for cache, I was manually building a Redis client and setting it up, but it wound up being a lot easier to just manually call make on the cache alias, which then sets up the entire cache repository, which will give us the power to use it in other places that we want to cache certain things. Or, for example, we're storing some things in session for like the authorization grant. With this app make cache, it immediately enables the Redis components, which then the session driver we use, and everything's good to go. So it's very short, it's very small, quick, clean, and I like it. The only thing it didn't have was the event service provider that Laravel 5 has, but I just copied one from an existing Laravel 5 app, and it works just like it normally would. So maybe we'll see it show up in 5.1, a version of Lumen. But yeah, that's all I've got on the Lumen side. The last little thing I wanted to mention, in case you missed it, is Laravel 5.1 is coming out in 5 days, which is super exciting, especially because it is a LTS release, the first one in, I think the history of Laravel, my favorite is. I was reading earlier today, like I said, in favorite. LTS will include 2 years of bug fixes and 3 years of security fixes, which is awesome. Like right now, I don't know his actual policy. Like I know he's occasionally updating like 4.2s still, but I think his main focus was 5.0, now 5.1, and he's been working on the documentation for it to get it ready for the release. But now you'll be able to, in case you work somewhere that wants to use like a framework or software that's going to be supported for a long time, 5.1 should help with that, because now you actually have an LTS release. You can say, hey, we'll use this version of the framework for 2 years. For bug fixes and for security things, we'll have 3 years of support. And then you won't have to fight the battle with whoever your superior is that's iffy on using a framework like Laravel that's been known to evolve sometimes too quickly to take advantage of the newer PHP functions and break some backwards compatibility. So I'm excited anyway. I don't know about y'all. And according to him, it's upgrade time from 5.0 to 5.1 is 15 minutes, which I guess we'll see if that's true come the 9th when I do some upgrading of our 5.0 app. But he fails to mention what 4.2 to 5.1 is going to be like, so that tells me that's going to be a little bit longer than 15 minutes. But
it's not too bad. I mean, like 4.2 to 5.
Yeah, that's what I kind of figured, because from looking at it, it didn't look like it'd be too hard, but some of the things we ran into with 5.0, which threw us for a loop, is he changed, and it looks like he changed from 5.0 to 5.1 again, where the like compiled.php file shows up. You've got the artisan optimize command, which kind of just compiles a bunch of code into one single file. He moved where that location is again, but that location, depending on how you deploy code, may not have the correct permissions for the application to write the file to the system.
He was putting it in the vendor directory for a little while, and people were like, why are you doing that?
Yeah, it's in the vendor directory right now. It wasn't that it is right now, and it's about to get moved out of it again.
I thought that like static class map was part of Composer or not, or this is something else Laravel's doing.
It's something else Laravel's doing. It's the same thing as that services.json thing that we always have issues with.
I don't care about Apache users.
No. I don't think anybody does these days, except for Apache themselves, and, well, they're taking a long time to get HTTP 2.0 out, so maybe not even them. But that's all I've got for Lumen and Laravel 5.0 LTS. We kind of already went over the features, and a lot of them have been all over Twitter and Laracast. Like some of the ones to highlight is the like broadcasting system that's being added. So you can actually, based on user events, say like registered, if they implement an interface, it'll broadcast that object to either a pusher, like listener, so you can push to like your front end page and show different information, or a Redis pub/sub connection, which is actually super fast. You just tie that into socket.io and you can get real time events showing up on your page, which is nice to have out of the box. And then a few other things, cleaning up. And the main thing he's been doing is cleaning up the documentation. If you don't want to wait till the 9th, if you go to the laravel.com/docs and click the little drop down on the top right from 5.0 to master, you'll be able to see what the new docs look like, and they are a lot more extensive and should have a bunch of nice examples for everything now. Not too much to hold your hand, but enough to get you in the right direction. So
I think the best part is he's like actually listing out all the public methods for stuff now, which is something I wish he had always done.
exactly, like the collections documentation especially is super, super in-depth and shows everything you could possibly do with a collection, which if you're familiar with, I think it's like collection, or no, it's like _.js, and how it's got a bunch of helper functions for working with arrays. A bunch of that is in this Illuminate Support collection class, and it's super nice for working with arrays. Gone are the days of wondering if it's closure then array, or array then closure, or needle and haystack, or haystack and needle. You just use the collection object and everything's great. But that's all Terry and I have for y'all. If anybody has anything they'd like to poke our collective brains with, questions, concerns, comments.
I was also thinking that Lumen would be really good if you have like a cross-site scripting issue, or like you have like an affiliate form on your site that you need to post to some client thing. You can just extract it.
Yeah, you definitely could, because Lumen's got the cross-site request forgery middlewares like Laravel does, so you can just run that through Lumen and then pass that data on to wherever we need to send it.
Assuming your other vendors, form or whatever, doesn't support cores.
Yes. That is always the fun part, is cores. I hate
You
cores.
just avoid it.
Yeah, I think that
They're middlewares for it, at least in some
Depends on who you're working with.
this is true. I actually think Laravel's been adding some stuff to make cores easier. I feel like I remember seeing a conversation about it in the past. But yeah, you could definitely use Lumen as a proxy for taking care of some cross-site request forgery, which is a mouthful to say apparently. But
So is there,
That's super cool.
is there any movement on the Laravel side to do anything with regard to PSR7?
Yeah, he tweeted about that like today, I think.
yeah, he's been tweeting about it.
I mean, other than, I know there's certain things about making fun of people for not actually supporting new response new response for the string, and then having it all default things. Other than that, anything on support?
I haven't seen him say anything, and we had the Q&A with him last month, and I don't think anybody actually mentioned PSR7 or
I
if
think
Laravel's going to support
You
it.
said that because Symphony is supporting it in some component, therefore Laravel is now supporting it. I don't know what component that is.
The Symphony component is a bridge from the Symphony request and response to PSR7. It's actually using, I think, like Zen Diactros to do it, but it's a bridge. So it's kind of like proxy support.
Yeah, it's kind of, Guzzle did the same approach though, for their,
Well,
For-
Guzzle broke their PSR7 support into its own module, though, into its
Yeah.
own library. And then they're including that library in Guzzle.
yeah. So I think it's going to be, either way, I think we're going to have to see a very slow on the uptake of PSR7, but at least it's now approved and there, so sooner or later it will happen. I just don't know if it's going to be in 5.1 immediately, or if he's going to roll it into a future update of 5.2 or 5.1 dot whatever.
This tweet says that they're going to be using whatever, I guess the latest HTTP foundation from Symphony, which will have PSR7. So 5.1 should be PSR7.
Yep.
I don't know if he does anything directly that would need it. I can't think of anything that.
I can't either. Like,
One of the few things he hasn't built himself. That would be. Yeah, it's one of the few things he actually hasn't recreated. So.
yeah, I'm not sure. I guess we'll have to wait and see once 5.1's actually, or technically the source code's already up there, just not tagged yet, so you could go poking around and see.
My
How
guess
it's-
is that the Symphony request foundation, those are mutable request and response objects, right?
I believe they are. I think that
Yeah.
was some of the contention.
Yeah.
Some of the blog posts I read were that either, can't modify them, so it's kind of awkward.
But yeah, if the request and response objects on the Symphony HTTP foundation are mutable, then you would just have to use the bridge to go over to PSR7, which is immutable.
Yeah.
So my guess is it's kind of like, okay, if you're using a Laravel application, you're using requests and responses that you can actually modify in place rather than having to get a new one. That's something. I mean, I've seen how Slim 3 does it, but don't have a whole lot in versus Slim 2, which is the immutable versus mutable requests. But beyond that, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I haven't looked too far into that aspect yet. The most I've looked at the request and response in PSR7 has been Guzzle 6 adding support.
Yep.
After that, something tells me even if Laravel doesn't support PSR7, you'll still use the same Laravel methods to make the responses, either with a facade or that helper function I showed off, and all that PSR7 stuff will just be hidden underneath, not exposed to us directly, or it will some way somehow. That's the one thing I haven't actually looked into yet. I remember the tweet that Terry just found, and I saw it and went, oh, that's cool, and then I think I favorited it to look at later. But definitely something to talk about next month with regarding PSR7, or maybe even all the PSRs for anybody who's wondering who the hell PHP Fig is and what PSRs are.
PSR2 now, right? But that was 5.1, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Tabs.
Yeah. 5.1 is the Laravel finally jumping on the PSR2 bandwagon. So if you have your PHPStorm set to code sniff PSR2, it won't bitch at you whenever you open up a Laravel file now, which is, I know, just so exciting and riveting. But anybody else have any questions? Anything they're working on and need stuck on something, pick our brains, or the floor is pretty much open to whatever conversation you would like to have.
So the code from tonight, like, is it on your GitHub?
My code, no, just because I was putting it together for this and it's kind of crap. But if anybody is interested, I will throw it up on a GitHub repo just for fun. Feel free to look at it and go, God, man, I'm just terrible at React.js. But yeah, I'll get the code updated and I'll put the link to it in the meetups comment section thing for the night.
That'd be good.
And then I'll also link the video for this. The live stream's linked up there, but the video itself will have a different URL.
Did you get the video figured out from last month?
So the screen recording, which was probably the reason why we're having Skype lag in the first place, stupid OBS, was a lost cause, because as soon as I put this, when I left the Skype call in the main Skype window, it was recording, because I was telling it to do a targeted window mode. The second I full screened Skype, it full screened and considered itself a new window, so the entire screen recording is just the empty Skype chat window. And no audio was recorded. So, a waste of time, unfortunately. But I think they still have the recording on the life size system. We won't be able to see Otwell at all, but we'll be able to see us, which, I mean, that's the main thing we really worry about. And then hear Otwell.
Audio.
So we can look in, that's still on the sites. I have no idea how long it's gonna be there. I asked if there's a way to download it, and there's no way to download it, but they can take the recording and edit it and sell it to Terry and I to do whatever with, so.
There's ways to.
Yeah, we'll find a way to get it other ways. if everyone's really interested. But yeah, unfortunately the OBS recording was a wash. But the next time we do a remote guest speaker, I'll try and get some stuff set up.
Bring my camera.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Problem solved.
And I'll make sure I set up or test the screen recording stuff ahead of time.
Delivery for John Kerr.
Alright. Sorry, no worries. Yeah, the next live Q&A, I'll make sure I got the screen recording stuff on lock and not a last minute decision. I've been thinking of pinging Chris Fidow or Fideloper on Twitter. He lives in San Antonio, so he could come in person, but I don't know. We have to find a way to convince him to drive her from San Antonio and back to do it in person. But as a compromise, I want to see if he'll do a little talk over his service for hackers or whatever else he'd like to talk about in a future meetup. So
Pretty cool to hear about Ansible or something.
oh yeah, he's been doing a lot of Ansible stuff recently, which I know I myself am very interested in. So, but we'll get some things planned out. And yeah, if you want to bring your camera, that'll be super helpful.
Yeah, no problem.
Awesome.
If anybody has any talks they want to give, they know particular thing.
Yeah, feel free to, like I mentioned in the email that I sent 2 or 3 or 5 times, I don't know anymore. If you have a topic you want to talk about, just let Terry and I know what you want to talk about. We'll put you on the schedule, which is pretty much, yep, you're going for next week's month because we don't have that busy of a talk schedule yet. And then if you have any questions about the talk or you want us to like look over the slides, first time doing it, you're worried or whatever, we'll help you out. But we would greatly appreciate it if you talk to us a minute, because I'm sure everybody's getting tired of Terry and I just standing up here and yakking our jaws. So hearing somebody else for a change would be nice, I'm sure. So just message us through Meetup or give us a ping on Twitter or the Facebook page. Thanks for the talk, guys.